Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another First Impressions video. In today's First Impressions video, we are taking a look at the HK MR556 A1. And before we get this video started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, Seal One. I am very excited about this partnership with Seal One because I have been using their firearms cleaning supplies for a very long time. So when I was able to get this partnership together, I was just super excited because I can tell you guys from my own experience in using this stuff that it works great. They make a wide variety of cleaning supplies for firearms and also other things like archery with their bowstring cleaner and wax. They make a CLP that is non-toxic and also bio-based that is going to come in a liquid and a paste. They even make some sub-zero temperature Seal One. And even better, they now have a fairly substantial discount code for their website to help support the channel. That discount code that you guys can use is FF-25. That's FF-25 at checkout, and that's going to get you guys 25% off of your order, and it's also going to go to help supporting the channel. One of the things that I absolutely love about my channel that I've created here is the fact that you will see everything in the way of firearms on the channel. It will go from an affordable 22 or an affordable Palmetto State Armory to a rifle, to a shotgun, to something like a TAC-14, and then it will go all the way to an incredibly expensive rifle like this HK MR556, shooting it with a relatively expensive thermal optic, which is the CNVDT that I'm teasing a little bit in this video. Hopefully you guys will see a little bit more about this optic here in the future, but it is whatever you are into, I am going to cover it here on Firearm Freedom. So that is what you get to look forward to here on my channel. I, as you guys know by now, am somewhat of a fan of HK firearms, and this MR556 was a complete surprise. I had absolutely no idea we were getting one in the gun shop that I work at, and once it came in, I just figured, you know what, why not? I have so many other HK firearms. I've always been rather curious about the MR556. I've only put a few rounds here or there through a buddy's rifle before, and I've never really experienced fully H&K's AR pattern rifle for myself, so I wanted to pick one up, and that is exactly why you see the MR556 A1 here on the channel today. And man, I am pretty excited about it. Like I am on most other HK products that I have in my collection. I have no affiliations whatsoever with HK other than them liking occasionally a photo on my Instagram or Twitter account. That is about it. Other than that, I don't know that they fully know that these videos exist. If you are familiar, as many people are, with the HK 416 rifles that many folks know around the world and from video games and movies and other things, this is essentially a 416 with a different rail and a longer barrel. With a few other minor changes, that's essentially what you're getting here. And in my opinion, with this longer barrel, you are getting better, or I should say slightly better performance out of this rifle than you would a standard 416. Now, the MR556s are incredibly expensive. That's probably one of the first things we have to touch on is the price point that these rifles come in at. You are generally seeing them come out. We retailed this at the gun shop that I work at about $3,009 for this rifle. Now, in the world of AR-15 variants, that is most definitely at the highest of high end of prices. Unlike other companies, and this is where, again, I may seem brand biased, but I promise you I'm trying not to be. I do believe that although this is still very overpriced, without a doubt, you are getting a little bit for your money. I've dealt with many other companies, and I have a lot of other expensive firearms, and a lot of those firearms, you're spending a few $1,000s on the gun, and you really don't feel like you are. And a lot of you guys out there may know and understand what that's like, but it's coming out of a cardboard box. You got no extras. You got a bone stock trigger, bone stock components that you're going to upgrade down the road. Fit and finish is kind of subpar for a few $1,000 rifle. That happens all of the time. And with this rifle, I'm not seeing that. I am seeing really a lot of cool stuff that you're getting and some negatives. Now, out of box, what are you getting with the MR556A1 and more particularly the most recent variation? This just came in from HK directly. So this is about as current of a variation of the A1 that you're going to see. On our furniture, they are no longer shipping them with the HK MR556 grip, whether it be the V2 or the other versions of the HK MR556 grip that they used to ship with. They're now shipping it with an MOE K2 Plus pistol grip. They have the standard and very iconic HK 416 or MR556 stock. They do have other variations of the stock that are going to be slimmer. As you guys can see there by the back, you got quite a chunk here on the back of this stock, and we'll go over that as well. You do have an upgraded charging handle with the enlarged latch on the left-hand side. Very nice charging handle. And you also have an upgraded 2-stage trigger from the factory that is once again phenomenal. You have an ambidextrous safety, and you also have now a free float 13 and some change inch rail that is going to be M-LOK instead of key mod. They did do key mod previously, but now they've completely switched to M-LOK. It does not come with the Midwest flip-up sights. Midwest was nice enough to send me those sights for this video and for the review process. Now they're going to give you a bunch of extras. You got your sticker in there. You got actually a really nice HK range bag if you wanted to use that. You also have a tool, and then you also have a Magpul Gen 3 magazine. Unfortunately, the rifles do not come with these oh so sweet HK steel magazines, these 416 mags. I did have a few of those laying around, so of course you know I got to use it with this gun. I got to hit on the furniture because that's about the only thing with this rifle that I'm really not a huge fan of. The Magpul K2 grip, this is a personal preference thing, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but this is probably my least favorite AR-15 grip that you could ever have on the rifle. So when I saw this on the rifle out of the box, I was kind of like, oof, man, that sucks that they went with that grip. I would take pretty much anything over this. Yes, the rubber is semi-comfortable, but I don't necessarily care that a grip is comfortable. I want it to just grab my hand in a good way. There's so many better grips that you could go with other than the Magpul K2 Plus. Now, the standard K2 grip I've ran on a bunch of other things, and that's okay. I'm not a fan of the rubber because it ends up just like sticking to a bunch of my stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of it. Don't like the feel of it when it gets hot. It can get slick in certain situations. So this grip is going to be immediately coming off, and I'm also going to get something to just fill in the small section here. Not a huge deal. You got a mil-spec trigger guard. Yes, there are better trigger guard options out there that you could go with. I've never necessarily had a big issue with this, and I am shooting in cold quite frequently, have gloves on quite frequently, and I've never felt a situation where I wanted a massive dip in the trigger guard, so I'm not super concerned with that, but the pistol grip does kind of suck. And then also, we gotta talk about the big chungus here in the back that is the MR556A1 stock. HK, you know, I like a lot of the stuff that you do, but this stock is just not one of those things that I like. When the stock is in your shoulder and you have a cheek weld on it, it is okay, right? I also like the way that it adjusts. So it adjusts by this small button underneath here, and you push up and pull back. Super smooth. That all is just fine. I don't have an issue with that. Man, the thickness in the back of this stock is unbelievable, and it's made so much worse with these sling pieces here on either side. Why would you ever do this? It is the worst possible design you could have come up with in a stock, and I'll tell you why. When you bring this rifle up into your shoulder, right? Or you go a ready up from over the top or a low ready or whatever, and you're bringing this up, the amount of times this clocked me in the chin or somewhere on my face as I was bringing this up was unbelievable. It just felt like somebody was uppercutting me every time I brought this rifle into my shoulder. Now, as I began shooting the rifle at the range, I slowly got used to it, but this stock is absolutely going to have to go. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are thinking, which is, well, Joe, does it really matter? It's just a stock. These stocks are not inexpensive, guys. These stocks are ridiculous. It's like $300 for this stock. So I would assume that just with the money that you would pay for this on the side aftermarket, that it would be a little bit better. But the stock leaves a lot to be desired, and I think I'm going to go with a B5 SOP mod stock on this. It's just, I feel like it's going to look great. But the stock is really just a no-go. And I have to say, other than the fact that it's just kind of iconic on this rifle and it's an HK stock, I don't know that it's the most aesthetically pleasing stock out there either. I think it looks big and bulky in kind of the wrong places. So again, that's going to go. And the last complaint on the furniture is just simply the girth of the handguard. It is very, very wide in the circumference of the handguard around the barrel. Now, the positive of this is that it is going to mitigate heat really, really nicely. You've got a lot of airflow here, and at no point, no matter how fast I was shooting, did I feel this rail heat up at all. It was phenomenal in the way that it dispersed heat, and you also are now very far away from your piston on the inside of the rifle. So I understand why they made this so wide, but I am probably going to switch this out for a Geisley rail down the road. This rail definitely could stay on here. I am not saying it's a bad rail. I think it does look a little large and a little bit out of place on the rifle. Now, as far as how it works, is it strong? All of those things I have absolutely no complaints about. They have a massive anti-rotation tab here, and then you have a very nice massive screw here on the bottom. This is kind of cool because in order to get to the piston, all you have to do is take this screw out. The whole rail comes right off without the need of any additional tools, and you can get to work on the piston, field strip the gun, etc. And then also, if you do want to switch out this rail for anything else that's out there on the market, you can do that and utilize the exact same barrel nut. The other companies that make rails for the MR556 or the 416 all use the same pattern back here, so all you got to do is swap this out, put the new one on, put the screw back in, and you're good. So that's the only reason why I might change this out for a Geisley in the future. It looks a little bit better, and also it's super easy to install. Talking on the fit and finish of the MR556 out of box, I was absolutely blown away by the attention to detail that HK consistently shows me on their guns, and that is why I do tend to like their rifles, whether it's my SP5 or the MR556 or the handgun series that I have, whether it's a USP, a VP9, a P30. All of these guns share one very similar quality, and that is the attention to detail. When you're looking at the anodizing on this upper and lower, it looks like truck bed liner. I mean, it is ridiculously thick. Maybe this isn't anodizing, it's an additional finish that HK is doing, but it just looks like you could just be scratching on this thing for days and it's not going to show you a single thing. It looks like a phenomenal finish. They colored white all the areas that, you know, look cool and have the HK lettering there. Some people might like that, some people might not, but the attention to detail is excellent. And on top of that, they did glass over any section that did not require the hardcore anodizing. It's not like they just sprayed the whole thing and called it a day. You'll notice on the top of the upper here, we have a smooth anodizing, and then right underneath, we got a more hardcore anodizing where there would be any extreme wear. Now, you do have a polymer dust cover. I personally dig the aluminum dust cover. That's always what I've had more of a gravitation to. Now, this is actually my first experience with the polymer dust cover, and I do worry about its rigidness as time goes on. So I'm going to be curious to see how this dust cover holds up. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not a part that's getting just a crazy amount of movement up or down, but that is something that generally I would prefer to be aluminum. As far as the internals of the gun, the bolt carrier group and the bolt and the internals of the upper receiver, the fit and finish was absolutely phenomenal. Other than the bolt carrier group being slightly dirty from the range day, there is not a single stray machine mark anywhere on this thing. It is immaculate. They glassed over the bottom. Every piece of the bolt carrier group is like meticulously gone over by the Teutonic folks over at HK. And I dig that. I really like the attention to detail that you are seeing. And I will say it was the exact same. You guys might remember me saying in my HK SP5 video that the attention to detail was the exact same. Of course, they have glassed over the internals of the upper receiver. It's all incredibly smooth. Bolt carrier moves back and forth without a hiccup, which is what I would expect from a rifle of this price point. Now, as far as the buffer, it is an incredibly heavy buffer. I believe you're working with a heavier than an H3 buffer. It's like as heavy as you're going to get, so just understand that going into it. It is not super easy to rack that bolt back and forth just with the mechanism of the MR556 and the buffer weight. But they do that for a reason. It can be a little bit of a violent system when you're looking at short stroke gas piston, which this MR556 is. I should also note that quite a few things in this gun are proprietary, even though they look like standard AR-15 components. And one of those things are going to be the front and rear takedown pins. Now, we can look at the front pivot pin here, and I can push all I want, but that pivot pin is not going to go back through, and the reason for that is because there's an additional piece inside of the pin here that you need to push into itself and then push through. Now, once you push that through, you're good, and you guys can see that small piece inside of here, and that is going to go back and forth, and you can see the same one in the rear, and that is how you depress the pins. Of course, it is not maybe as ideal to not have a toolless field strip ability on this gun, but I am up in the air about it. I do think it's a little bit frustrating, a little bit tedious to get those pins out. I don't know that it's the end of the world for me, but other folks out there may think differently. Now, some of the other proprietary things in this gun are the trigger. The fire control group is completely proprietary to the MR556, and also the safety. And what is proprietary about the trigger is this. If we dry fire the gun and drop the hammer, on a standard AR-15, you would never be able to get that safety to go back into the safe position on the selector once the hammer is down. On the MR556, you can do that without issue. They have this small block in the back that if you open up the upper, you can see, and for that reason, a standard AR-15 trigger will not drop into this gun. I do like that feature. It's kind of nice to have full movement of the safety, whether the hammer is up or down, although I would like it to be not a proprietary part. I will say HK still helps out a little bit with giving you a very, very, very good two-stage trigger right out of the box. So to show this trigger to you here, you can see we have a nice two-stage setup. So you're going to get to that wall, a very crisp wall, really nice break. And then you're going to get to your reset right about there, break again. I would never change this trigger out. It's a great trigger. It feels awesome right out of the box, and it's most definitely better than a mil-spec trigger. So I like that fact. They didn't just give you something that was proprietary and say, hey, this is proprietary, and screw you, here's a crappy, gritty mil-spec trigger that sucks. That's like the worst mil-spec trigger out there. They at least allowed you to have a good trigger. I am one of those rare folks out there that cannot stand an ambi safety. I am not a fan of it on ARs because no matter what side I'm on, the safety rubs into my finger because I grip high up on the grip. So for me, I could absolutely do without the ambi safety, but it didn't bother me all that much at the range, so I'm not going to gripe about it too hard. Moving up to the handguard itself, you do have non-stuck QD points on either side of the rail. What I mean by non-stuck is they're not going to have any anti-rotation tabs. So it's going to have 360 degrees of movement. You might like that, you might not. For me, I actually do enjoy the movement on that. It allows me to just get my sling situated exactly how I want. No matter what position the QD point is in, I'm going to be able to rotate it where I need it. They are giving you a pretty standard bird cage up here in the front of the rifle, and it is not going to have a section on the bottom that does not have the compensating ports, so you got to watch out on that when you're shooting Prome. This is going to be swapped out for an ASR 3-prong flash hider here shortly. Not a huge deal, but we will be running the rifle suppressed in the future. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in a future video. The MR556 is short stroke gas piston, so typically that is going to yield to a slightly different recoil that the rifle is going to have. Now, a lot of folks out there have talked about the weight of the gun. It is not light. The MR556, the 7.62 variation as well, they are very heavy guns. I am not one to really harp on a gun too much because of its weight, but in this case, a lot of folks were talking about how the weight really soaks up that recoil, and it does. It's not a really snappy gun, but just like the scars that I've shot in the past, the recoil's a little weird feeling. You got to get used to it. So it has kind of that dolphin effect where, you know, it's got like a wave movement like that. Now, at the end of the range day, towards the end, after all the shooting, we were just fine, and we were getting used to it at the range, and I was really kind of learning that recoil. But it's going to take you a second. If you've never shot a 416 or an MR556, the recoil is most definitely going to be different than a lot of piston guns out there, and also a lot of DI guns for sure that you've shot. So that is something to keep in mind. Your piston underneath here is non-adjustable, so you're just stuck at that gas setting that it's on. A lot of folks talk about how overgassed and punchy the 416 is. I did not feel that at all with the MR556, so I would imagine that 16-inch barrel, like we talked about earlier in the video, really does help the overall performance of the rifle. I think that is definitely the way to go. The 416s, I've heard a lot of kind of hit or miss things about, and I think a lot of that is due to how short that barrel is and just how the system acts like that. Now, in this case, the gas is mitigated a lot better with the 16-inch barrel. Our ejection pattern was right around that like 3 o'clock position. It was spitting them out right where we needed them to be, and I think that's going to be excellent when we move to running the gun suppressed. For barrel, you are working with a cold hammer forged chrome-lined HK barrel. It is a phenomenal barrel. We were not doing a ton of accuracy testing, but just getting a very minor amount of groups at the range on thermal, just seeing how everything worked. It was spitting them right into the same hole with absolutely no effort whatsoever. So I have no doubt that once we bring this rifle out to a further distance, it's going to do very well. So stay tuned for that. That is going to wrap up this first impressions video on the MR556A1. If you guys have any other questions about this rifle or anything else on the channel, please throw them down below in the comment section, and you guys know I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to the description for the ways to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.